It started with a rumor, the kind that lingers in hushed conversations at the local diner or in the wary glances of fishermen returning from the sea. A lighthouse, long abandoned, stood on the jagged cliffs at the edge of Blackwater Bay. No one had tended it for decades, yet on certain nights, when the sky was moonless and the waves were restless, its beacon would glow, bright and unwavering, cutting through the darkness like an unblinking eye. I had heard the stories before, dismissed them as the usual, local folklore meant to keep outsiders away. But something about this one gnawed at me. Maybe it was the way old Tom, the bait shop owner, had looked at me when I asked about it. Like he wanted to warn me, but knew it wouldn't matter. Or maybe it was the growing unease in my chest, a feeling I couldn't quite shake, as if the lighthouse itself was calling to me. So I went. I told myself it was for a story, that it was just another mystery to unravel, just another article for the magazine. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I had to see it for myself, had to prove that there was nothing there but rusted beams and crumbling stone. That night, with my recorder in my pocket and a flashlight strapped to my wrist, I set out toward the cliffs. The path was treacherous, winding through gnarled trees and slick, uneven rocks. The wind howled through the branches, whispering secrets in a language I couldn't understand. The air smelled of salt and decay, heavy with the weight of something old, something forgotten. When I reached the clearing, the lighthouse stood before me, a towering silhouette against the starless sky. Its once white paint was now a peeling husk, revealing the corroded metal beneath. The windows were dark, gaping holes that seemed to watch me as I approached. Then, without warning, the light came on. A cold electric pulse shot through my spine. The beam rotated slowly, methodically, just as it would have in the days when it guided lost sailors home. But there was no one inside. No keeper, no working generator. I swallowed hard, forcing my feet forward. The heavy wooden door stood slightly ajar, swinging faintly in the wind. A part of me screamed to turn back, to leave this place to its ghosts. But my hand moved on its own, pushing the door open with a groan that echoed through the hollow structure. Inside, the air was thick with dampness and the scent of oil and mildew. The narrow spiral staircase coiled upward into the darkness. My flashlight flickered, casting long shadows along the walls, where old nautical maps and rusted tools still hung as if someone had left in a hurry. Left, but never truly gone. I stepped deeper in, and that's when I heard it. A faint shuffling sound followed by the creak of a floorboard above me. My breath hitched. I wasn't alone. I froze. The sound had come from above. Just one creaking floorboard, but it was enough to send a chill through my bones. I strained my ears, holding my breath, listening for anything else. Nothing. Just the distant crash of waves against the rocks below, and the rhythmic hum of the beacon as it continued its slow, steady rotation. My flashlight flickered again. I smacked it against my palm, the beam stabilizing for now. With cautious steps, I started up the narrow spiral staircase, the rusted metal groaning beneath my weight. Each step felt heavier than the last, like something unseen was pressing against me, urging me to turn back. But I couldn't stop now. As I climbed, the air grew colder, thick with the scent of sea brine and something else. Something metallic, like old blood. The walls were lined with faded photographs, each one clouded by time and dampness. Faces of long-dead lighthouse keepers stared back at me, their expressions frozen in rigid solemnity. Some of the photos had names scrawled beneath them in a spidery hand, but the ink had bled away, leaving only faint traces of their identities. Halfway up, I heard it again. A slow, deliberate shuffle. I swallowed, forcing myself to move faster. I reached the next landing, a small room, just before the final staircase leading to the lantern room. The air here was heavier, thick like stagnant water. A single wooden desk sat in the center of the room, covered in dust except for a single clean space where something had recently been moved. A ledger lay open, the pages brittle with age. My fingers hovered over it before I flipped to the last entry. August 23rd, 1967. The light was not meant to be lit tonight, and yet it shines. It shines even when I turn my back. The door creaks when no wind blows. I hear the voices in the fog. They call my name, but I will not answer. I will not answer. A drop of ice ran down my spine. The handwriting grew more frantic as it reached the end of the page, as if the keeper had scrawled the last words in desperation. I turned the page, but the rest of the book was blank. Then behind me, a whisper, not words, not a voice, just the sound of breath, too close, too real. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my grip. The room was empty, but the door leading to the final staircase, the one that had been closed, was now slightly open. A sliver of darkness beyond. I moved forward step by step, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My fingers brushed against the door's edge, pushing it open wider. A gust of icy wind rushed past me, carrying the scent of damp stone and something older. Something wrong. The lantern room was just ahead, bathed in the eerie glow of the rotating light, but something was off. The bulb, it wasn't attached to anything. It hung there, suspended in midair, humming softly as it cast its glow over the empty room. And in the glass reflection, standing just behind me, a figure, tall, gaunt, eyes hollow, sunk in pits of black. I turned, but there was nothing there. Only the sound of the floorboard creaking again. This time, much closer. The air in the lantern room felt thick, like trying to breathe through water. My legs locked in place as I stared at the glass. My own reflection trembling, but there. Just for a second, something else had been there. A shadow. A figure. But when I turned, the room was empty. The rotating light flickered, casting long, shifting shadows against the walls. My mind screamed at me to leave, but my body refused to move. The unnatural hum of the suspended bulb filled my ears, vibrating deep into my skull. It wasn't attached to anything, yet it burned bright, cutting through the darkness. Then I felt it. A breath, cold, damp, right against my ear. I stumbled back, slamming into the railing behind me. My flashlight slipped from my grip, spinning wildly across the floor before coming to a stop, its beam pointing directly at something in the corner. A door. A rusted bolted door that shouldn't have been there. The lighthouse blueprints I had studied before coming here never mentioned it. But there it was, barely visible beneath layers of peeling paint. My heartbeat pounded in my skull as I stepped forward, compelled by something I couldn't name. The metal was ice cold beneath my fingers as I gripped the handle and pulled. The bolt gave way with a shriek. The door opened beyond it. A narrow stone passage spiraled downward, deeper than the lighthouse should have allowed. The walls were damp, covered in long streaks of something dark. A smell hit me. Earthy, rotting, old. My body screamed at me to turn back, but my feet carried me forward. Step after step, I descended. The air grew heavier, pressing against my chest. The humming from the lantern above faded, replaced by something else. A voice, no, voices, whispering, muted, overlapping, too many to understand. They swirled around me, growing louder with each step. My vision blurred at the edges, the darkness thickening like ink. Then, suddenly, I reached the bottom. A cavern stretched before me, walls slick with moisture, and in the center, a chair, an old weathered chair, its wood blackened with age. Thick chains hung from the arms and legs, rusted but still intact. Around it, the floor was covered in deep scratches, as if someone had clawed at the stone itself. And then I saw them, the bodies, not fresh, not even skeletal, just shadows, human-shaped stains against the walls. Their outlines burned into the stone, as if they had been seared there. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just a lighthouse, this was something else. A prison, a tomb, and the keepers. They had never left. The whispers grew deafening. The air turned electric, buzzing like static against my skin. The shadows on the walls began to move, shifting, stretching. I stumbled back, my breath ragged. A voice, clearer than the others, cut through the chaos. "You should not be here." My blood turned to ice. The room trembled, the chains rattling against the chair. The air swirled, the shadows breaking free from the walls. Then the light above flickered. Once, twice, and everything went black. The darkness swallowed me whole. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no breath, no sense of up or down. Just endless black, stretching in all directions. My heart pounded in my ears, my hands grasping at empty air. Then, slowly, the whispers returned. No longer distant, no longer mere echoes. They were all around me, and they were getting closer. I turned, or at least I thought I did, but my body no longer felt like my own. A cold, unseen force pressed against my skin, wrapping around me like fingers dragging me deeper. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay, and somewhere in the void, a low guttural voice rasped, "Stay." My pulse spiked, every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. My flashlight was gone, my body weightless in the endless abyss. I squeezed my eyes shut, whispering to myself, "This isn't real. This isn't real." Then out of the blackness, a light, not the bright, steady beam of the lighthouse, but something softer, flickering like a candle in the wind. It wavered ahead of me, beckoning. Without thinking, I reached for it. The moment my fingers brushed against the glow, everything shifted. The darkness peeled away. I gasped, suddenly standing back inside the lantern room. The rusted floor cold beneath my hands. The lighthouse beacon continued its slow rotation, as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. Something had changed. The door to the hidden chamber was gone. The walls, where the burned silhouettes had been, were now smooth stone. There was no sign of the cavern, no chains, no chair. Had I imagined it? Number. I knew what I had seen, what I had felt. A gust of wind rushed through the open doorway, and with it, the distant sound of a bell. A ship's bell. My pulse quickened. There were no ships out tonight, not in this weather, not this close to the cliffs. But as I stepped toward the window, the beam of the lighthouse caught something in the distance. A ship, or at least the shadow of one. A massive, skeletal silhouette drifting silently across the waves, its sails torn, its hull blackened with age. The moment the light touched it, the whispers returned, only this time. They weren't coming from below. They were coming from the ship. I stumbled back, breath hitching in my throat. The ship glided closer, moving against the wind, its presence warping the air around it. Then, in the dim glow of the lighthouse, I saw them. Figures, lined along the deck, unmoving, hollow eyes fixed on the lighthouse. On me. I blinked, and in that instant, the ship was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there. The whispers ceased. The air stilled, but something inside me knew. I had been seen. The lighthouse beacon continued its slow, methodical sweep, as if oblivious to the horrors it had just revealed. I turned, my body trembling, my mind struggling to grasp what had just happened. Then I saw it. The logbook. The same one I had read before. Still open on the desk, but now there was a new entry. One that hadn't been there before. March 16th, 2025. He came looking for answers. Now he knows. Now he must keep the light burning. He must. My breath hitched. That was today. And the handwriting. It was mine.